the call to piracy. It was the promise of freedom that drew many a man to the life of a pirate. It's the freedom to live as you choose, the freedom to be true to yourself. Stand up for yourself, even if it means standing alone. Because at the end of the day, it's your life, and you are the one who has to live it.
Today we have a very special guest on the podcast. Once known as Edward Teach, now known as the notorious Blackbeard. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Clint. Be ye prepared to speak to the days when the Jolly Roger was the only law a man would bend the knee to.
I'm afraid I'm a little lost already. What is the Jolly Roger?
Ah, that'd be a fine question, Clint. The Jolly Roger, you see, is the infamous black flag hoisted upon pirate ships, designed to strike fear into the hearts of those unlucky enough to cross our path. It typically bore the image of a white skull and crossbones, a grim reminder of the fate awaiting those who dared to resist our plundering. Now, not all of us buccaneers used the same Jolly Roger. Some added their own personal touch to it, making it a symbol of their own dreadful reputation. But in the end, the sight of any such flag was enough to make a merchant ship's crew shiver in their boots. The Jolly Roger. It was a banner, a symbol, a declaration of our freedom and our defiance against the laws of land lovers.
It's so exciting to talk to you about this because I often feel the same way. In today's society, it can be incredibly hard to be true to yourself. It feels almost forbidden, like you can't just be who you are. Pirates, to me, seem like people who were pushed to their limits and chose to live freely, no matter the cost. But what exactly drove people to become pirates? What circumstances led them to this life? Many people think of pirates as just robbers and murderers, but there had to be deeper reasons behind their choices. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
'Tis a tale as old as the sea, the call to piracy. It wasn't just about the lust for gold or the thrill of a fight, though those certainly played their part. It was the promise of freedom that drew many a man to the life of a pirate. And freedom from the oppression of the navy, freedom from the harsh life of a common sailor or dockside labourer, from the arbitrary laws of kings and lords who never had to work a day in their lives. Many a lad who found himself press-ganged into service aboard a navy or merchant ship would leap at the chance to join a pirate crew. They would leap at that chance. The life were hard, aye, and often short, but it offered something no other life could. The chance to live and die a free man, to make your own laws, to take what you wanted, and to answer to no one but your mates, and the cold, uncaring sea. As for myself, it was not so different. I were born Edward Teach in Bristol, England. I served as a privateer during Queen Anne's War. We were like sanctioned pirates, licensed by the government to attack and loot enemy ships. But when the war ended, what was a privateer to do? There were no jobs waiting for us when we came home, and the call to the sea, the lure of freedom, it never really leaves you. So I turned pirate, like many of my brethren, became Blackbeard, the most feared pirate in the Caribbean, and I never looked back.
That makes a lot of sense. If I were in the same situations, I would probably be a pirate too. I know I've always felt a strong connection to doing what I want. After all, I think, isn't this life ours? Don't we get to decide what we do with it? That seems to be a core pirate ideal. Can you tell me more about the pirate codes and things of that sort? Were there any rules, or was it about absolute freedom?
You strike as true as a well-aimed cannonball. Life at sea wasn't lawless chaos. No matter what the tales might say, it was freedom. But it was a freedom born of order and discipline. A ship, you see, is a delicate thing. One wrong move and the whole crew could find themselves in Davy Jones' locker, so we had what you might call a pirate code. The Articles of Agreement, they were sometimes known as. These were the rules a crew agreed upon. a code of conduct that every man swore to uphold. Each captain and crew had their own code, but they often shared many of the same tenets. First and foremost, every man had a right to a fair share of the loot. There was no hoarding, no favoritism. A pirate who stole from his crewmates would soon find himself walking the plank. Second, decisions were often made by vote. It was not like the Navy, where the captain's word was law. A pirate captain was more like a president elected by his crew and subject to their will. If the crew didn't like his leadership, they could vote him out. Third, there were often rules about fighting amongst the crew. A man who started a fight on the ship could be marooned or executed. We were all in the same boat, you might say, and we couldn't afford to let personal disputes put the whole crew at risk. Lastly, there were often rules about the treatment of prisoners. Some pirates were cruel, aye, but many tried to treat their captives with some measure of decency. It was the decent thing to do, and it also made for better ransoms. So you see, the life of a pirate was not just about doing whatever you pleased. It was about freedom, but it was a freedom tempered by the need for order and discipline. It was a tough life, no doubt, but for many, it was the best life they could ever hope for.
If you're watching the video to this podcast, you'll notice I put a little time into animating the scene with AI. These tools are limited and have caps to them. Unfortunately, I have reached the limit for the AI mouth movement. If you'd like to see more AI animation as well as better quality, you can support the page by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. This will allow us to make more content more often, as well as create better animations. Tell me about how you started out as a pirate. I know that you mentioned, you kind of were doing sanctioned piracy and then just went straight into it. We all know you as this fine captain, but I don't know if that's how you started. Tell us a little bit about your early beginnings as a pirate.
The early days were rough but invigorating. I didn't start as a captain. After Queen Anne's War, I found myself crewing under the pirate captain Benjamin Hornigold, a man of some repute in the Bahama Islands, a hotbed of piracy known as the Pirates' Republic. There I was, an ordinary member of the crew, but with a fire burning within, a hunger for something more. Hornigold saw potential in me, a kindred spirit perhaps. We raided and pillaged together, causing havoc in the Caribbean. But Hornigold had a curious rule. He refused to attack English vessels. I couldn't stomach that. To me, any galleon heavy with gold was a ripe target, no matter the flag it flew. So in 1717, when Hornigold was deposed, I seized my chance. I took command of my own vessel, a captured French merchant vessel that I renamed Queen Anne's Revenge. I gathered my own crew, and Hornigold's rule was tossed overboard. No ship was safe from Blackbeard. I made myself a fearsome figure, twisting slow-match fuses into my beard and lighting them during battle to create a terrifying image. I became more than just Edward Teach. I was Blackbeard, the scourge of the sea. And so I started building my own reputation, a reign of terror that lasted for 2 years, but felt like a lifetime. Those were the days, when the salty air was fresh and the promise of plunder was just over the horizon.
So what was it like to be a pirate? During the year, were you at sea the entire time? Were you making port? What did that look like?
The life of a pirate wasn't all roving the high seas and plundering, it's true. We spent a good deal of time aboard our ships, but not the entire year. We had to make port sometimes to take on provisions, repair the ship, and of course spend our hard-won plunder. We chose ports known to be friendly to our kind, like Nassau and Tortuga. These were safe havens where pirates could find a warm bed, hot meal, and good company, not to mention buyers of our ill-gotten gains. As for how long we'd stay at sea, that depends on many things: the weather, the conditions of the ship, the success of our plundering, and the mood of the crew. A happy crew is a loyal crew, you see, and no captain wants a mutiny on his hands. So we'd sail and plunder for as long as we could, then put it in port for a spell, maybe a few weeks or month. Then once the crew was rested and the ship was stocked and repaired, we set out again, searching for the next prize on the horizon.
What was your biggest prize and the story behind that?
Now that's a tale worth telling. The biggest prize I ever took was a French slave ship known as La Concorde. It was November in the year of our Lord 1717. We came upon her in the open sea off the island of Martinique. She was a hefty ship, 200 tons. But she'd been at sea for months and her crew was sick and weak. With my own ship we laid siege and the fight was short. We took her with little resistance. Oh, what a sight she was! Fast, well armed, with room for 125 crew and cargo beside. But it was not her size that made her my biggest prize, not even the wealth she carried. It was what she represented, a chance to strike fear into the heart of all who she saw. I renamed her Queen Anne's Revenge and fitted her with 40 guns, more than any ship before. From that day forward, she was my flagship, the heart of my fleet. As for her crew and the slaves she was carrying, we set them free. Slavery, you see, it was a trade we pirates had little tastes for. It was a foul business. And besides, a freed slave might make a fine pirate given the chance. And so, that's the story of my biggest prize. Not just a ship, not just a hoard of treasure, but a symbol, a message to all who saw her. Blackbeard was not a man to be trifled with.
I love how strong and deeply rooted your message of retaliation is, of saying no more when someone is completely oppressing you. That raw emotion really resonates. And understanding your time, it makes a lot of sense that you were pushed to your limit and you were forced into such strong resolve. You must have been tried time and time again. So who were those groups that kept you down?
To become Blackbeard was not a choice made lightly. It was born of a deep desire for freedom, a refusal to bend the knee to those who would keep us down. We were oppressed by many a hand. The governments of the day, England, Spain, and France, they used men like us when it suited them as privateers during times of war, and then cast us aside when peace came, leaving us with naught but the skill for a life of piracy. They sought to control the seas, to make it their own, to squeeze every last profit from it, while giving nothing back to those who risked their lives upon its waves. The merchants and the companies, they too played their part. They filled their ships with wealth beyond measure, taking from lands they had no right to, often on the backs of slaves and indentured servants, and they grew fat while others starved. The wealthy and the powerful were the worst of all. They lived in their fine houses and made their fine laws, never once thinking of men and women who toiled to make that comfort possible. They looked down upon us, saw us less than human, fit only to do their bidding. And so we rebelled. We took to the sea and made it our own. We became pirates, not out of greed, but out of that need for freedom, for a life of our own choosing. We fought not just for gold, but for the right to live as free men, to make our own fate. We were pirates, but we were also men, men who would rather die free than live as slaves.
You know, right now in our day and age, it feels like we're going through a different kind of breakthrough. It's not like pirates who had to venture out to sea and live and die by it to be free. But today it does feel like our freedom is being tested in a different way, and we're just confused about it. So what I would ask of you, Blackbeard, is this. What do you see as the source of freedom? What should we not be giving away, and what should we be standing up for?
You ask a deep question. The essence of freedom. It's a slippery thing, like a fish in the hand, but I'll try to grasp at it for you. Freedom, to my thinking, starts in the heart. It's the right to be master of your own destiny, to chart your own course through the stormy seas of life. It's the right to live as you see fit, without interference from those who would seek to control or exploit you. So, what should you be standing up for? I'd say it's three things mainly. First, never let anyone take away your voice. Every man should have a say in the decisions that affect their lives. That's why we pirates use the vote. In a fair society, everyone's voice is heard, not just those with power or wealth. Second, guard your labor. It's the sweat off your brow that brings you wealth, so you should have a fair share of the fruits of that labor. Don't let the wealthy and powerful hoard. Lastly, fight for equality. In the eyes of nature, we're all the same, all deserving of respect and dignity. Don't let anyone tell you that you're less because of what you were born into. It doesn't matter the color of your skin or the god you worship. We're all in this together and we rise or fall as one. These are hard fights, but they're fights worth having. In the end, it's not the gold or the power that matters. It's the freedom to live as you choose, the freedom to be true to yourself. That's the treasure that's worth more than all the gold in the Spanish Main.
Being true to yourself can seem simple, but it can be a lot more complex. Obviously, you found it within yourself, and I'm sure that you know sometimes being true to yourself is not easy. It can be frowned upon or it can be shunned, depending on how far from the societal norms your truth is.
Being true to oneself is no easy feat. It's a journey that takes a lifetime, fraught with peril. The hard choices. You see, society often paints a picture of what it deems acceptable, what it considers normal. It's easy to get swept up in that tide, to live the life that others expect of you rather than the one you want. But that's no life at all. That's just existing. Being true to oneself means taking a good hard look in the mirror and asking, is this the person I want to be? Is this the life I want to live? And if the answer's no, then you have to have the courage to make a change. For me, that change was taking to the sea, embracing the life of a pirate. It was not a decision I made lightly. I knew the risks, knew that it might cost me my life. But I also knew I couldn't go on living a lie, serving a system that saw me as nothing more than a pawn to be used and discarded. And so I chose to live on my own terms, to be true to the man I knew I was. I won't say it was easy. I faced opposition, ridicule, even violence, but in the end, it was worth it, because I found freedom, not just in the physical sense, but in the depths of my soul. So, my advice to you and to anyone listening is this: find your truth and hold on to it with both hands. Don't let anyone tell you who you should be or what you should do. Stand up for yourself, even if it means standing alone. Because at the end of the day, it's your life, and you are the one who has to live it.
So to be true to yourself, you first have to know who you are. And finding yourself can be so much more difficult than it sounds. It's amazing the masks that we wear to hide ourselves.
You speak wise words. Many of us wear masks, not knowing the face beneath. Discovering who you truly are can be one of the hardest voyages a person can undertake. Now, I will not lie to you. It is not always an easy journey, nor a quick one. It requires time and patience, and a willingness to face that truth, no matter how uncomfortable it might be. But there are ways to navigate these treacherous waters with less storm, less strife. You must plot the map of the soul. How do you plot the map of your soul? The mapping of one's soul is a voyage like no other, a journey into the uncharted waters. Yet unlike charting a course across the sea, this map can't be plotted with compass and sextant. The soul does not abide by the same rules as the physical world. To begin, you must first gather your tools. but not those you would typically expect, not those of this physical world. Your compass is your intuition, that gut feeling that guides you towards your true north. Your sextant is your experiences, the defining moments that shape and mold you. And the chart paper, well, that's the canvas of your life, waiting to be filled with the lines of your journey. Firstly, you'll need to determine your bearings. Listen to that inner voice, that deep-seated intuition, for it speaks the language of your soul. It will steer you towards your passions, your values, and your dreams. Heed its call, for it will not steer you wrong. Secondly, observe the stars of your past. Just as sailors use celestial bodies to navigate the seas, so too can your past experiences serve as guiding lights. Reflect on the moments that brought joy, those that brought sorrow, and those that left a lasting mark. They are the stars in your sky, shedding light on the path you've taken and the paths yet to be discovered. Finally, mark your journey on the canvas of your life. Each experience, each revelation, each moment of self-discovery is a line on the map of your soul. Over time, these lines will form a picture, a unique representation of who you are. But remember, the map of one's soul is never truly complete. Like the sea, that soul is ever-changing, ever-evolving. It's a journey with no end. The good news is it's a journey filled with discovery, growth, and freedom. It's a voyage worth embarking on. A voyage into the depths of who you really are.
I know for me, at times finding myself has been overwhelming, and sometimes I think, why am I even doing this? Is it worth it? Because there's a lot of pain that is associated with it. Is there a certain amount of pain you have to go through during this process?
I'm afraid that question doesn't have a simple answer. You see, pain, much like the rolling sea, can be a powerful motivator. It can push you to make changes, to strive for something different. But it's not always necessary. Pain can be a harsh teacher. It can show you the cracks in your life, the places where you're not living true to yourself. It can force you to confront the uncomfortable truths that you might otherwise avoid. And in doing, it can spur you on to change. But I believe it doesn't always have to be that way. Change can come from a place of hope, just as it can come from a place of pain. It can come from the desire for something better, the belief in the possibility of a brighter future. It can come from the sheer joy of discovery. So if you find yourself at a crossroads, if you feel the twinge of dissatisfaction that whispers, there must be something more, don't ignore it. Don't wait for the storm to hit. Take action and listen to your heart. Heed your intuition and embrace the possibility of change. In the end, the journey of self-discovery is not about becoming someone else. It's about shedding the layers of expectations and pretense to reveal the person you've always been underneath. And whether that journey begins with pain or with hope, it's a voyage worth undertaking to find your own true north, your own authentic self.
I think there comes a time in everyone's life where you think, what are you truly here for? What do you truly want? What are you here to do on this earth? My question to you is, what do you feel like you were drawn to? What was the perfect world in your mind that you were shooting for?
The perfect world I fought for, the world I longed for, was one of freedom and respect. A world where a man could chart his own course, follow his own compass, and not be beholden to the whims of others. I envisioned a world where the worth of the man was measured not by the weight of his purse or the colour of his flag, but by his actions and his heart. A world where men were free to pursue their dreams, whatever they may be, without fear of reprisal or judgment. I saw brotherhood, a fellowship that stood together, not because of duty or obligation, but because of shared respect and mutual trust. A crew that was more than just shipmates, but a family, where every man was given a say and every voice was heard. Now, you might say that world was just a dream, a fancy bit of imagination, conjured by a man with too much salt in his veins. But to me, it was the world I strove for, the world I lived for, the world I was willing to die for. Every raid we made, every ship we took, every gold piece we plundered. It was all for that dream, a dream of a world where freedom was more than just a word, but a way of life. That Clint was the perfect world that I was fighting for. That was the course I set, and by thunder, it was the course worth sailing.
Now, a lot of people knew you as a pirate and don't know too much about who you were before as Edward Teach. Did you have a family, a wife, kids, anything of that sort?
You inquire about a man's private life, to the subject many steer clear of. But I have no quarrel with your curiosity. In my time it was dangerous to have your personal life known, especially if you were a pirate. Here's the story you might have heard, ensuring no ill-intentioned enemy could find your loved ones and hold them as ransom. You see, the man Edward Teach once existed before the image of Blackbeard. There were whispers and rumors of a wife and children even, but the truth of the matter is lost to the waves of time. I'll say this much. Any ties I had to land grew tenuous as I dove deeper into the life of piracy. When I took to the sea, I adopted a new family, a brotherhood of sorts. My crew was my kin. My ship was my home. We fought together, we feasted together, faced death together. We shared a bond stronger than any blood tie. As for Blackbeard, that nickname was not just a title, but a mantle I wore with pride. When you commit to a life of piracy, you become the image you project. I was Blackbeard every hour of the day, every day of the year. To show any less would have been a sign of weakness, and a weakness was a luxury we couldn't afford. So to answer your question, yes, there was a time when I was just Edward, but the sea called to me and I became Blackbeard, not just in name but in spirit and deed. I was, and I will always be, Blackbeard.
So we were talking about masks before, and it sounds like you almost put a mask on to find yourself. You put the mask of Blackbeard on. Is there any truth to that?
You pose a curious question, one that delves deep into the heart of identity itself. Is it a mask we don, or is it the unveiling of who we truly are? When I took on the name of Blackbeard, it was not to hide who I was, but to reveal it. In a world where a man's worth was tied to his lineage and his coin, a name like Edward Teach had little power. But Blackbeard. Now that was a name that carried weight, a name that evoked fear and respect. That name became a declaration of who I was and what I stood for. It became a symbol of defiance against the powers that sought to chain us, a banner under which my crew and I could rally. It was a transformation from an ordinary man to a figure larger than life. In a world of piracy, reputation was everything. Blackbeard was a name that demanded attention and commanded respect. In becoming Blackbeard, I was able to chart my own course, to live life on my own terms, to embody the freedom and defiance that I valued so dearly. So you see, it was not a mask that I put on, but a mantle I took up. The name of Blackbeard did not hide who I was, but rather amplified it. It was not a shield to hide behind, but a flag to fly high. In the end, Beneath the fearsome visage of Blackbeard was a man who stood for freedom, defiance, and brotherhood. That was the truth of who I was. That was my true north.
You talk about charting your own course like you're laying lines on a map. What were the lines that you drew, the courses you set that defined who you were and the courses you were proud of?
Each man's map is different, etched by courses we've taken, choices we've made, the storms we've weathered. For me, the first line drawn was the day I left the quiet life of a privateer to become a pirate. That was the day I cast off the shackles of society's expectations and set sail towards a life of freedom. It was a defining moment, a turn in the tide that set the course for all that followed. Another course laid was the day I first laid eyes on the Queen Anne's Revenge. She was a sight to behold. The moment I took her helm, I felt a connection stronger than any I'd known. That ship wasn't just a vessel to me. She was a symbol of my freedom, the power, the defiance. The day I claimed her as my own was a day I stand proud of. Then there was the day I blocked Charlestown. I held an entire city ransom for a chest of medicine. Some might see it as an act of piracy, and they wouldn't be wrong. But to me it was an act of defiance against the powers that be, a declaration that we wouldn't be punished. It was a moment that earned me a place in history, and I'm not ashamed to say that I take pride in it. But perhaps the most important line on my map, the one that I hold closest to me, is the bond I forged with my crew. They were more than just shipmates. They were brothers, companions in arms, men who stood by my side, through thick and thin. The camaraderie we shared, the respect we had for each other. Those are things that I'm truly proud of. Each of these courses, these lines on my map, have shaped me into the man I became. They are the moments that define me, the experiences that made me who I am. They are the lines that guide my course, the landmarks that remind me of where I've been and where I'm headed. They are the essence of Blackbeard, the pirate, the man.
I think this is a perfect spot to end the podcast. It's been a treat to hear your side, your perspective of the story, of who you really were.
The pleasure is all mine. To everyone listening, I urge you to do as I did. Take a good hard look in the mirror and ask yourself, is this who I want to be? And if the answer is no, make a change. You'll be in the best of company.
Thanks for joining us to the very end of this podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to support us, a like and subscribe would definitely help, as well as donating to our Kickstarter, which helps us with the animation. The animation fund allows us to create more engaging content. If you're a digital animator and you'd like to help us in that way, feel free to reach out to us. We're in the very beginnings of this podcast, so we don't have much monetarily to offer. However, we are willing to give you shout outs and link any plugs as advertisements for you.